Good day. Once again, this is Pastor Theo with another mini midweek meal. I hope and pray that all is well, especially for those who are receiving a whole bunch of snow. Sometimes we get stuck in and it slows us down, and that can be a good thing, because if not, we be out ripping and running. So please use wisdom and care in terms of navigating this weather for those of us who are in colder parts of the country. I want to just give a brief recap of what I spoke about this past Sunday. 2 Sundays ago, I was concluding the series on what it means to represent Christ, and I was looking in the book of Romans, mostly chapter 5 and chapter 6, in order to drive home the point exactly of why the gospel was needed, what the gospel was, what all it entails. And I just went through it swiftly to lay that foundation. But today I wanted to be able to unpack it more. And so I went through the first 11 verses in chapter 5, really fleshing out a lot of the terminology, because when we read the Bible, we have to be careful not just to interpret it and read it at face value in terms of how we interpret things in the English, because we get some of it, but we may lose some of the nuances, some of the richness that is found in the Greek or the Hebrew or Latin and things of that nature. And so we were talking about how we've been justified, we've been made righteous by faith, not by our works, not by our money, not by our intellect, not by our power. We were made justified, righteous in his sight because of our faith. And he also gave us a peace. And this peace meant that God quieted our spirits. He quieted our souls. He gave us rest. So think about how many of us at night struggle to get a good night's rest. We have restlessness. There's a storm brewing in our minds and our hearts. But when we have faith in Jesus, he quiets us and he gives us a peace. And he makes it so that the things that are all stormy gets quieted, and that restlessness turns into rest. Isn't that what we desire, just to have a certain level of peace? And we can't find that peace in other stuff. Other things that we've tried fail to accomplish that which only God can do. And we talked about how we rejoice in hope in the glory of God. And not only that, and that rejoice is we boast in him. We brag, because normally we boast and brag and put our confidence in things that fail us. And when those things fail us, it makes us feel a certain way. It's saying that we should brag and boast and put our confidence in the glory of God. And not only that, we also glory and are we able to boast in tribulations. And this sounds so twisted for so many people. Why would we rejoice and boast in trying times? And that tribulation talked about in the Greek, pressing together, almost being crushed. And it is very similar to the root word tribulum, which is Latin, which referred to this agricultural instrument that was a heavy piece of wood with jagged rocks underneath it. And an animal such as a donkey would drag that over grain to separate wheat from chaff, or drag it over corn to separate the corn from husk. So it would be a process where that which is inedible, unusable, not good, is separated violently almost from that which is good. And so when we go through tribulations, as trying as they are, God is cleansing us. He's fortifying us. He's purifying us. He's separating us from sin. And so oftentimes when we're in tribulations, we want to quickly have them in. But we read that tribulation produces perseverance, and that perseverance is a steadfastness, a standing behind, a standing under. So you got to stay under it. We want to quickly get from under it. When we go through tough times, we want to quickly get from under that. We want to get out of it. Lord, deliver me from this thing. But sometimes that very thing is what God is using to fortify us, to strengthen us, to shape and mold us into the image and likeness of his son, Jesus Christ. So we want strength. How many of us want strength? How many of us want patience? We want glory. We want all these things, but those things are the result of going through trying times, going through tribulation, where there's a separation of that which is unusable to that which is usable, that which is bad and that which is good. Are we willing to stay under the tribulum long enough that God can do what he desires to do? And it says that perseverance produces a level of character, and that character produces hope. And that character is a tried character. It's a proved character. So how do we know that we are who we say we are? We don't know it because of the good times. We know it because of the bad times. You know, I think it was Theodore Roosevelt once said, and I'm paraphrasing, if you want to, it was either him or Abraham Lincoln, if you want to know who a man really is, give him adversity or give him power and see how they deal with life during those times. They get exposed. We don't truly know who we are during the good times. We really get to know who we are during the times that are trials and tribulations, because there's a perseverance, a resilience that comes out of those things. And this perseverance and resilience is not just revealed because of it, it is actually produced because of the trials. So there's a level of strength that we can't possibly gain if we don't go through. So how many of us are still willing to go through? And keep in mind that the one that we serve, he went through it also. Is there another way? Can this cup pass? Nonetheless, not my will be done, but yours be done. And he went through. And then it went on to say that while we were without strength, while we were enemies, while we were no longer compatible, no longer in right relationship with him, it was at that time that Christ died for us. Because we, before sin, we were compatible with God. And we could be in relationship with God. But because of sin, we were no longer compatible because we became unrighteous. We became sinful. And what we deserved was death. And it wasn't personal on his behalf. It was simply because of who he was. He could no longer stand to be in the presence of us as unrighteous people. So what Christ did was change and exchange. He changed the nature of the relationship that we have with God the Father by changing who we were. He redeemed us. He reconciled us. He justified us. He made us once again righteous, which made it so that we can once again be in relationship with Christ. And he also exchanged. He exchanged his life for ours. He who knew no sin became sin. And so it's not simply that God woke up one day and says, hey, we can be in relationship again. We were only able to be in relationship with the Father again because of what Christ did. So if there's any gospel that we're preaching or any other religion that we're preaching that doesn't involve Jesus, his death, and his resurrection, how can we get back to the Father? How can we be reconciled if not for the blood that he shed? The one that justifies us, the one who saves us. So we can't minimize who he is or what he's done and still think that we can get to where we need to be in terms of being reconciled back to God. It is only possible through the truth, the way, and the life. And that is Jesus. And so if we want to spread the gospel, we got to make sure that as we're spreading the gospel through words, that we're also living a life that demonstrates that we actually have received the gospel ourselves. Because when it says that he demonstrates his love for us, that he died for us, that word demonstrates means that he has actions that have lined up with the words. We read that he is love and that he loves us, and then he demonstrates that he has actions that line up with those words by actually living out what it means to love us. So can we now demonstrate that we have received the gospel, that we are followers of Christ, or do our actions not line up with our words? So it's very simple, y'all. Let us not minimize who Christ is and what he has done for us by promoting a gospel that does not involve him, a gospel that we would try to say that we really didn't need because our lives weren't that bad beforehand. No, we were enemies. We were sinners. And if not for what he did on the cross, we would still be enemies of God. But let us rejoice in the fact that he saved us. Let's rejoice even in tribulations because it works out in us perseverance, character, and hope. And let us use all those things to represent him. Once again, it's been Pastor Theo with another mini midweek meal. I hope that you are blessed. Take care.